The palace echoed with silence, a silence so deep it could crush the heart. Her long, silver-white hair swept across the floor as the alien queen paced alone, her glowing markings dimmer than ever before. Once she had been the unshakable ruler of a galactic empire, her gaze sharp enough to make armies tremble. But tonight, her eyes carried only one truth: her daughter was gone. Lost to the war. Taken when flames and screams filled the skies. She had held her child's tiny hand until the chaos ripped them apart, leaving only emptiness. But what if emptiness wasn't the end? The queen refused to weep before her court, but inside, grief hollowed her out. Each night, she wandered to the great crystal balcony, searching the stars, whispering her daughter's name. Hope was a fragile ember, yet it refused to die. Somewhere across the galaxies, her child was alive. She felt it. A mother's instinct never lied. Far from the glittering towers of her world, across barren wastelands and fractured moons, a man crawled through blood and ash. His name was Kale, a human warrior with scars carved deeper than any blade. He had lost everything: his people, his land, his reason to believe. He fought because fighting was all that kept him breathing. Yet fate is cruel and kind in equal measure. On a night when he expected death to take him, he stumbled into the ruins of an enemy outpost, and heard a voice. Soft. Fragile. A child's voice calling out from beneath the rubble. Kale tore through metal beams with bloody hands, ignoring the pain in his bones, until he uncovered her, a small alien girl, skin glowing faintly blue, eyes wide with terror but alive. She clung to him as if she had known him forever. She did not speak his tongue, but the way her tiny fingers gripped his wrist told him enough: she had no one else. For the first time in years, Kale felt something stir inside him. Not anger. Not vengeance. Something dangerously close to purpose. The girl's name, he would later learn, was Lyra. Keeping her alive was no simple task. Patrol ships swept the skies. Armored machines marched across fields of bones. The child's presence made Kale vulnerable, but he couldn't leave her. Night after night, he carried her through ruins, fed her scraps, wrapped her in his cloak to keep her warm. When she cried, he whispered stories of Earth, of oceans that breathed and forests that sang, though he barely remembered them himself. Slowly, she began to smile. Slowly, his broken world began to shift. One evening, when the red sun dipped below shattered cliffs, Lyra traced her small hand across Kale's scars. She looked into his eyes as if asking him a question without words. Why do you protect me? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because he didn't know. But the galaxy knew. Somewhere deep in the queen's heart, a tremor stirred. She awoke from restless sleep, her pulse racing, as if someone had whispered to her across the void. Her daughter was alive. She could feel it. And she would stop at nothing, break every treaty, burn every star, tear apart every world until Lyra was back in her arms. Kale did not yet understand the storm he had stepped into. He only knew one truth: he would protect the girl, no matter who or what came for her. Even if that meant standing before an alien queen herself. And so, two paths began to move toward each other, a mother's desperate hope and a warrior's fragile redemption. Neither knew the collision would change the fate of the galaxy itself. The war was not over. In fact, it had only just begun. The night was restless. Kale and Lyra hid among the twisted bones of an abandoned city, the ruins glowing faintly under twin moons. He had grown used to the silence of war, but the silence with a child beside him felt sharper: every sound, every breath, a risk. Lyra slept curled against his side, her hand still clinging to his arm, as if she feared he would vanish by morning. For years, Kale had welcomed death. Now, for the first time, he was afraid of it. Morning brought new dangers. A patrol ship roared low across the horizon, sweeping beams of light across the rubble. Kale threw his cloak over Lyra, pressing her small body against the ground. The searchlights lingered, then drifted on. He exhaled only when the sound faded into the distance. Each day survival grew harder, and yet, something inside him burned brighter. He was not only surviving, he was protecting. Far away, in the alien capital, the Queen summoned her war council. The hall shimmered with crystal light, but her voice was darker than any shadow. "She lives," the Queen declared. The generals shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Evidence was thin, the war had swallowed thousands, yet the Queen's eyes blazed with certainty. My daughter is out there. Bring her back, no matter the cost. Armies shifted course. Fleets were redirected. Entire sectors trembled under her command. Hope had become her weapon. Kale, unaware of the ripples spreading across the stars, struggled to keep Lyra alive. They scavenged old war shelters, stole water from enemy outposts, learned to communicate through gestures and half-formed words. Lyra pointed to the stars one night and whispered her mother's name. Kale didn't understand the word, but he understood the longing in her voice. She wanted to go home. And he had no home to return to. The bond between them deepened in silence, in laughter that broke through the ashes, in shared hunger and stolen moments of safety. Lyra began to trust him not just as a protector, but something more. Kale had never thought himself worthy of fatherhood. He was a man built of violence and failure, but when Lyra slipped her hand into his without hesitation, he realized he was already becoming something he never believed possible. But peace never lasted. One evening, as they crossed the shattered bridges of a ruined citadel, shadows moved. Soldiers in black armor emerged from the rubble, weapons drawn, their helmets glowing with cold light. Kale grabbed Lyra, sprinting through the ruins, bullets sparking against stone. He dove behind broken pillars, heart hammering, as Lyra clung to him with wide eyes. He had fought countless battles, but never with something so precious in his arms. The soldiers advanced, their boots echoing like drums of doom. Kale whispered to Lyra, "Run when I tell you." She shook her head violently, tears brimming, refusing to let go. He almost smiled. This child had more courage than men twice her size. Then the air shimmered. From the shadows, a figure appeared, cloaked in silver light. Not a soldier. Not a machine. Something older, stranger. The figure raised a hand, and the ground trembled. The soldiers faltered, disoriented, as blue flames licked across the ruins. Kale shielded Lyra, unsure whether this was salvation or another nightmare. The figure's voice rang out in a tongue Kale did not know, but Lyra's eyes widened with recognition. She whispered a single word, *guardian. The soldiers fell back, consumed by the unnatural fire, retreating into the darkness. The figure lowered its hand, the flames dying as quickly as they had appeared. Slowly, it turned toward Kale and Lyra. Beneath the hood, glowing eyes stared at them, unreadable. Kale tightened his grip on Lyra, ready to fight if he had to. But Lyra stepped forward, her small fingers reaching out. The figure knelt, lowering its hood. It wasn't a man, nor a woman, but a being carved of the same blue skin as Lyra, adorned with ancient symbols. Its gaze flicked between Kale and the girl, lingering on Kale longer than expected. "Protect her," the being said in broken human tongue. "For she is the key." Kale froze. The words struck him harder than any blade. The key? To what? The being rose, fading back into the shadows, leaving only silence behind. Lyra clutched his hand tighter than ever. And far away, the Queen woke from her dreams with tears streaming down her face. She had seen the vision too, the human and the child standing together. Hope sharpened into certainty. The search would intensify. Kale looked at the stars that night, holding Lyra close. He had no idea what destiny he had stepped into, but one thing was clear: protecting the girl was no longer just survival. It was fate. The journey grew more perilous with each passing day. Kale and Lyra moved through scarred wastelands, guided only by instinct and desperation. The words of the mysterious guardian echoed in his mind, "She is the key. But to what?" Every time he looked at Lyra, he felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. She was more than a child lost to war. There was something in her blood, in her very presence, that made the galaxy tremble. At night, Lyra would dream, her body glowing faintly, casting pale light across the ruins where they rested. Kale would watch in silence, torn between awe and dread. He had seen too much death to believe in prophecy. Yet here was a child who lit the darkness, a child whose breath seemed to bend the world around her. He knew one thing with certainty: whoever hunted them understood her importance, and they would never stop. Meanwhile, the Queen's search stretched across the stars. Fleets combed uncharted systems, armies scoured forgotten worlds, and spies whispered of strange sightings. Each report drew her closer to hope and closer to fury. The council urged caution, reminding her of the war still raging. But the Queen's heart had already chosen. To her, nothing mattered more than finding her daughter. Even if the galaxy burned. Kale and Lyra's fragile peace shattered one cold dawn. They were crossing a desert of black glass, remnants of a planet burned by ancient weapons, when the sky erupted. Warships thundered overhead, their engines screaming, soldiers dropping like shadows against the sand. Kale grabbed Lyra and ran, but there was nowhere to hide. The ground split with explosions, fire raining down. He pulled her behind a jagged ridge, shielding her body with his own. The soldiers surrounded them, armored and merciless. Kale stood, weapon drawn, though he knew it was useless against their numbers. Lyra clung to his cloak, eyes wide with fear. A commander stepped forward, voice harsh and metallic. "The child belongs to us. Stand aside, human, and your death will be swift." Kale tightened his grip on his weapon. "You'll have to go through me." The commander raised a hand, signaling the strike. But before the soldiers could move, Lyra's body blazed with light. Not faint this time, blinding. The air rippled, the sand trembled, and a wave of energy erupted from her small frame. Soldiers were hurled back, crashing into the dunes, their weapons useless. Kale fell to his knees, shielding his eyes, as Lyra's voice rang out not in words, but in something older, deeper. A song of power, vibrating through every stone, every star. When the light faded, silence claimed the battlefield. The soldiers lay scattered, unconscious or dead. Kale stared at Lyra, his heart pounding. She stood trembling, eyes glowing like suns, before collapsing into his arms. He held her tight, fear and wonder twisting inside him. She is the key. Now he understood. She wasn't just the Queen's daughter. She was something far greater. Word of the event traveled fast. Survivors reported the explosion of light, the destruction of elite troops. The Queen received the news with shaking hands. Her daughter's power had awakened. And if others discovered it, the war would spiral beyond control. Enemies would hunt her not just as a hostage, but as a weapon. Kale carried Lyra through the night, her small body weak, her breathing shallow. She stirred only once, whispering a single word, "Home." His chest tightened. He had no home left, but for her, he would find one. For her, he would face armies. For her, he would challenge even the Queen herself. But destiny had no patience. As dawn broke, a shadow fell across them. From the horizon, ships emerged, their banners bearing the crest of the Queen. For the first time, Kale realized the moment he had been running from was near. The child's mother was coming. And when she arrived, Kale would learn whether she was salvation or the end of everything he had begun to protect. The clash of destinies came beneath a blood-red sky. Kale stood on the edge of a battlefield, Lyra in his arms, as the Queen's fleet descended like a storm. Soldiers poured out, their formation perfect, but no weapon was raised. They were not here to fight, they were here to deliver her. The alien Queen emerged from the heart of the army, her presence more commanding than any blade or fire. Her silver hair flowed in the wind, her glowing markings pulsed with restrained emotion. For a heartbeat, her eyes met Kale's, and in them he saw not just power, but fear, the fear of a mother who had almost lost everything. Lyra stirred in his arms, her faint voice whispering, "Mother." The Queen froze. The warlord vanished, and only a mother remained. She fell to her knees, arms outstretched, tears breaking across her face. Lyra slipped from Kale's hold and ran into her mother's embrace. The reunion was raw, breaking every chain of pride and protocol. The Queen held her daughter as though she would never let go again. Kale stood silent, the weight of his journey pressing down. He had protected the child, carried her across fire and death, but now she was home. His purpose seemed complete. Yet as he turned to leave, the Queen's voice stopped him. "You," she said softly, her words trembling, "you carried my daughter when the galaxy sought to swallow her. You kept her alive when I could not. You are owed a debt no crown can repay." Kale shook his head. "I didn't do it for debt. I did it because," She deserved to live. To be more than a pawn in this war. The queen rose, Lyra clinging to her hand. And that is why she chose you. Not the armies. Not the empires. You. A broken warrior with nothing left to give, except everything. Lyra reached for Kale, her eyes pleading. The queen looked between them, and in that moment, something shifted. The war that had torn galaxies apart seemed small compared to the bond forged in the ashes. She understood then, her daughter's survival wasn't just chance. It was meant to remind them all what they had forgotten. That hope was stronger than conquest. That compassion was mightier than fear. And that even in the darkest war, a single act of protection could change the fate of worlds. The queen lifted her head, her voice ringing across the battlefield. The war ends here. Gasps rose among soldiers and generals, but none dared defy her. Treaties would be signed. Blades would be lowered. The galaxy would not be healed in a day, but it would begin with this choice. Kale watched in silence, unsure if he still belonged to this story. But Lyra's hand slipped into his, bridging him to a future he had thought impossible. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to breathe not as a soldier, not as a survivor, but as a man who had found a reason to live. The queen placed a hand on his shoulder. "Stay," she said simply. And in her eyes, Kale saw no command, no throne, only gratitude. He gave a faint nod. Perhaps he had not lost his home after all. Perhaps he had just found a new one. As the sun set over the scarred horizon, the war-torn galaxy exhaled. A mother had regained her daughter. A warrior had regained his purpose. And together, they had proven a truth that would echo for generations. That no empire, no weapon, no endless war could rival the strength of love fierce enough to defy the stars.